Hi Jeronimo.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the Customer Experience Exchange for Financial Services.
Thank you.
So to start us off, Jeronimo, in an industry such as financial services where trust is a little bit strained, how do you create a brand image that truly delights your customers?
It's a good question. I mean, and every financial firm, I think these days, is very mindful of trust building. Not long ago when you hear people talking about it, now people are realizing that it's not something you talk about, it's something you build and earn. Certainly not something you should put in advertising, in my opinion, and I've seen it and I continue to see that sometimes. But trust is key, obviously. It's core to what we do. Particularly, I'd say, I mean, of course, banks, but with insurance companies, even more so, arguably, because you're making a promise. You're basically saying, I'll have your back, in the future when something comes up or you need me. So trust is key. And I think when you look at trust, you've got to look at both dimensions, the rational and the more emotional piece. So on the rational front, it's really a product of functionality and whether or not you've been able to deliver in the past, claims, products that actually deliver in terms of solutions that people are looking for, that sort of thing, reputation, all of that. How long have you been around? The fact that you've been very solvent, or your financial results are what people expect them to be. Your stock price is doing well. And then there's the emotional piece, which I think is the trickier side of things, because that's where trust actually gets eroded very quickly. If something were to happen, if an episode or something comes up that threatens trust, I think it can disappear overnight, take you decades to build, and it's just gone. A scandal, some sort of PR issue, something happens, obviously, and that's gone. So I think on the emotional front, it's where it gets a little trickier, and it's where you really want to be able to be very authentic these days and very relevant in the way that you communicate with, I think, consumers at large, not just your customers, but consumers as well. The other piece that I think is key is being able to sort of make a promise that you can keep. So, at the end of the day, if we stand for something, then we should be able to deliver that on a day-to-day basis in our call centers, in our claims processing, with our advisors who are ultimately our brand ambassadors in front of clients. So are we delivering on that promise? And ultimately, if we are, I think trust gets built over time. But unfortunately, it's one of those things that you need to be very mindful of, because it can disappear very quickly, and it keeps us on our toes.
What value do you place on developing effective employee brand ambassadors, and how do you go about that?
So it's significant value, I would say, massive value from our perspective as far as the brand is concerned. It's a huge opportunity, obviously, to basically deliver on that promise that I was referencing earlier. It's still somewhat siloed. I'd argue that still you don't always see a real sort of connection between those that are delivering that promise, speaking to a client, the employees ultimately, who are the ambassadors, and the brand. What we do see today, which I think is very, very powerful, is employees who want to be brand ambassadors and are out there being brand ambassadors, advocates, with or without our permission. And that's sort of the reality of social media and the digital age. And so what we need to do and what we continue to try to do is to arm and sort of bring about the tools and the programs and the skills and everything that we think an employee might want in order to be a better brand ambassador. The reality is those who want to be a brand ambassador are already there. They're doing that regardless of whether or not we bring them into a formal program. And so when an organization our size recognizes that, I think it's a powerful opportunity to sort of say, let that be ultimately the brand message, what people are saying about us versus, a print ad.
Manulife successfully launched its Are You Ready brand campaign in 2015. What was the thinking behind that campaign?
Well, we wanted to make sure that we were consistent with what we had been saying in the marketplace. I mean, we as marketers, get so tired of messaging very quickly, and we want to move from one campaign to another year over year, And the reality is consumers are not at all, tired of something that you might have said for a period of 5, 6, 7, 8 months during the year. And so we needed to be consistent. We had come from a place where we talked a lot about preparedness, the notion of being prepared. And with Are You Ready, it was a little bit more of an opportunity to, because it was a question, it was more of an opportunity to sort of bring about a level of reflection. So we weren't going to necessarily tell people like we had before what we think they need in terms of products and solutions and that sort of thing. We were going to simply state the facts and paint them, scenarios and let them figure out whether they're ready or not. And hopefully in the process of realizing whether they're ready or not, they'll think of us as a trusted partner, if you will, somebody that they can talk to, an organization that could have their back in the future or could help them reach their goals and objectives in many cases it isn't entirely about needs, but also objectives or goals, dreams. So it was really about reflection. It was sort of putting a mirror in front of consumers and saying, are you ready? And so it was just a conversation starter, ultimately. What you'll see actually launching next week, which is a continuation of the Are You Ready campaign, is a little different. It's more about awareness raising. So there's a tool that's more of a test, an opportunity for people to actually get a little bit dirtier, a little bit closer to their personal situation by taking a test, an online tool that we're developing for people to be able to assess their readiness level with an index, if you will, or with a comparable, and figure out what they might want to do, to close the gap.
What do you value more and why? Is it personalization or automation?
Well, they're both great. I mean, automation is pretty awesome. I mean, it certainly has helped a lot and continues to help a lot when it comes to ops and delivering. But I think we have to be careful with automation. What you're doing ultimately, or in most cases, is you're resolving for a friction. You're looking for pain points and trying to figure things out in a manner that is more agile or quicker, for resolution, if you will. With personalization, there's a much bigger opportunity for connection, in my view. There's an opportunity to actually develop trust differently, and not so much because it's what I was referring to earlier, the idea of functional versus emotional. For me, automation is much more about functionality, whereas personalization, it's about that emotional connection. It's the opportunity to actually, get to the hearts, not just the minds of consumers. And with personalization, you have a chance to build sort of lifetime relationships. With automation, you build loyalty, obviously, but I'm not sure it's as sticky as personalization. So I value both, but I'd say if I had to choose, I'd probably choose personalization. Yeah.
How do you see the customer experience landscape changing in 2016 in the North American market?
I don't know that it's going to change a lot. I mean, yes, it'll change a lot in terms of how quickly things are happening. Something might come up, a new gadget. I don't know. I mean, wearables are the talk of the day, and I suppose hopefully we'll see a lot more uptake on those. I think there's lots of opportunity for financial firms to tap into them. We are tapping into wearables ourselves, in terms of being able to reward people for their life habits, if you will, their decision making associated with health and nutrition and so on. So that'll continue to, I'm sure, gradually pick up. But beyond that, I think what will continue to happen is, we'll just reinforce the fact that, yes, the control has shifted a long time ago. We're finally coming to terms with that. As an industry, I mean, other industries are way ahead of us, I think. But as an industry, financial services has lagged a bit in coming to terms with the fact that, it's not us, it's not our story, it's not our journey, it's the consumer's journey, it's their story. And what are those needs and objectives that go along with that story. So it's a continued realization that that's what the reality is. I think 2016 will just continue to bring people together in forums like this one to have those conversations, to share practices, learnings. I actually, is one of the things I find intriguing from a psychological perspective. The fact that we live in a day and time when people are willing to share a lot more, because particularly for financial services, this is a very, I'd say, challenging time in some ways. Is that we are an industry that's used to control and used to being top heavy and letting consumers know what we believe they need. I mean, it's a very different kind of industry, right? So unlike retail or consumer packaged goods and that sort of thing, I think for us it's been a little bit more challenging, and 2016 may be a bit of a turning point, because what I see and what I hear is just a lot of appetite for change and a lot of appetite for new ways of doing things. Everybody's talking about the same things. I mean, there isn't a silver bullet, if you will, to solve everyone's problems, but at the very least, we're all talking about the same issues, and I think that'll continue to happen. Yeah.